Hello viewers, we welcome you once again to the GreenRoad TV YouTube channel. Today, we're bringing you the recap of the Nollywood movie, Chance. The story begins with Pamela Johnson as she arrives from the airport. At the same time, a young man also arrives at the airport. They both take a taxi to their various destinations. At the Johnson home, two women, Pamela's mother Felicia, and her best friend, Debbie, receive a call from her, where she tells her mother that she is on her way home. Her mother admonishes her to ensure she arrives home quickly for her 25th birthday, to which Pamela replies, asking, "Who else would I be spending it with?" Mother and daughter throw friendly banter around, before Pamela tells her that she will be home soon. The two women appraise their preparations for Pamela's birthday. They are certain that she would love the surprise birthday party they have prepared. As they gush over their preparations, Pamela calls again. She speaks to her best friend, Debbie, who she informs that she has just arrived Lagos via the airport. She asks her friend that they hook up at a party, but Debbie replies that she is in Port Harcourt. Debbie is obviously playing with her. But the line cuts off when Pamela asks to be told the issue that kept her friend in Port Harcourt. As her phone dies in mid-conversation, she asks the driver to pull over so that she can get her phone charger cable from her luggage in the booth. When he does, she opens the box and discovers that the box isn't hers, it belongs to one Lawrence Okeke. Pamela calls the airport duty manager using the driver's phone. After explaining her predicament, Pamela asks for the contact details of the passenger whose baggage was swapped for hers, the Lawrence Okeke whose name is on the baggage. The duty manager sends her his phone number. Pamela calls the number, and Lawrence answers. After raising her voce at him in an exchange that isn't too pleasant, she asks him to come to where she is and bring her box so they can make the exchange. The call ends with Lawrence not too pleased with her manner. Lawrence heads out to meet with her, while back at Pamela's place, her best friend and mother are beginning to experience slight unease when they call and discover her phone is switched off. While she stands there worrying, a car drives up to her. It is Lawrence. He calls her name, and immediately Pamela lets him have it. She asks him how he could take a luggage without confirming if it's his or not. Lawrence is not impressed with her attitude. After arguing, and Pamela raising her voice at him, he brings out her box, and they make the exchange. As she makes to leave, he calls out to her and apologizes, taking the blame for the mix-up. She then tells him that if he's truly sorry, he would let her charge her phone so that she can make a call and book a ride home. He accepts. She puts her luggage in the car and gets in. Back at home, the place is gradually filing up with guests, and mother and friend are beginning to get worried as they keep calling her number. A man walks up to Pamela's mother. He calls her by her first name, Felicia. To which Felicia replies that he should keep it formal and address her as Mrs. Johnson, and proceeds to call him by his formal name. He asks her to call him Martin. Martin and Felicia engage in a verbal spat, with Felicia asking him why he's here. He replies that he came bearing a gift for his daughter's birthday, telling her that his friend's daughter is his daughter by extension. Felicia proceeds to throw him out, but not before he insinuates that he can get any woman he sets his eyes on. Inside his car, a conversation ensues between Lawrence and Pamela. She tells him that she came down from Abuja to spend her birthday with her mother. Lawrence is sorry that she had to spend her birthday in that uncomfortable way, and takes out glasses and a bottle of wine to toast her birthday. Pamela accepts and they both drink to the day. While Felicia paces around, worried, back in the car, Lawrence and Pamela's conversations deepen. He tells her that he manages a real estate company, while she informs him that as the only child, she runs her father's food company. Now mother and friend are truly worried. Felicia especially is beginning to worry that something could have happened to Pamela. As Debbie dispels her fears, a man, David, joins them. He too says that he hasn't heard from Pamela. David offers to continue trying her line, while family and friends worry. Pamela is having a good time with Lawrence. Conversation-wise, they're rolling on. Their conversation moves to dating, with Lawrence telling her that not all men are scum, and that because she hasn't dated all men, especially him, she can't make that statement. She replies that she has dated only one man. Lawrence doesn't believe her, but she tells him the story, that they started in her first year of school, but that the man eventually fell out of love with her. A pensive Lawrence watches her as she tells the story of how the man got another lady pregnant without her knowledge, and eventually left her to start a family with the woman. After her tale, Pamela calls for her ride. Lawrence watches her quietly, perhaps pondering on things we do not yet know. Perhaps it's the wine talking, or perhaps it's something else, but Lawrence moves in with the classic line, and asks Pamela if anyone has ever told her she's beautiful. She replies, a couple of times. A coquettish smile here. A lingered gaze there, and the couple appear enamored with each other. While our couple is busy staring lovingly at each other, completely oblivious of the trauma Pamela's absence is causing, in the car, the couple are fast asleep. Pamela wakes up with a headache, sees 22 missed calls on her phone and cries out. Her cry wakes up Lawrence, who offers to drive her home, but she declines, noting that he is drunk. She calls Debbie instead. Her worried friend asks her to give them her location so they can come pick her. Eventually, Debbie arrives and picks Pamela and takes her home. At home, her mother demands to know what happened. She accuses Pamela of going drinking and standing up her guests. Lawrence arrives back home and sees bags in his living room. A girl, Olivia, comes out and welcomes him. He tells her that he wasn't expecting her and that she didn't tell him she was coming over. After exchanging endearments and each person telling the other that they miss them, the apparent lovebirds take their endearments upstairs to conclude with that thing couples do when the doors are locked and they are alone, in a room. In Lawrence's home, Olivia answers the door, and Frank, Lawrence's friend, steps in. Frank asks to see Lawrence. When he comes down, they hug, and Lawrence proceeds to relate the tale of his experience with Pamela. He tells Frank that after drinks, they both kissed. His friend is happy for him, and asks if he has given her a call back, to which Lawrence says he won't because he has a girlfriend. But Frank tells him not to allow the fact that he has a girlfriend stop him from meeting his future wife. He says that some women are meant to be girlfriends, wholesome or proper wife material. He tells Lawrence to give her a call. Lawrence eventually calls, but the cab driver answers the call. Lawrence then remembers that Pamela's phone was dead. He concludes that at least now, he could move on with Olivia. Again, we see both girlfriends, Debbie and Pamela. Pamela steps out of the bathroom holding up a pregnancy kit. A surprised Debbie wonders how that is even possible, seeing as Pamela has been single for a very long time, and she doesn't sleep around with random men. At this point, we can conclude that our dearly beloved Pamela is pregnant. As her friend wonders how that could have happened and with whom, Pamela then opens up and tells her that after drinks, she and Lawrence got drunk, kissed and had sex. An incredulous Debbie tells her that they should call him up and see what he has to say about the situation, but Pamela realizes that she doesn't have his number. She decides to call the airport duty manager and get his number from her just as she did the first time. She makes the call. And even though the manager declines to send her the number, after pleading passionately with her, the manager accepts and sends Pamela, Lawrence's number. For the second time. In his home, loverboy Lawrence is busy doing what has gotten Pamela into trouble, during breakfast. He is looking into Olivia's eyes, telling her how beautiful she is and talking about staring at her eyes for the rest of his life. Olivia returns the love, telling him how lucky she is to have met him. The lovebirds share a kiss, and as they do so, Lawrence's phone rings. He answers it, and it is Pamela. Flustered, Lawrence takes the call upstairs, while Olivia looks curiously on. He tells her that he's been trying to reach her through the driver's number she called with. She asks to meet with him on a serious matter. He tells her that the next day would be best and they conclude. At home, Debbie advises her friend to go do a proper test so that she can have a formal report to show him when they meet. The day arrives, and Lawrence has seen the report. He is not pleased. He refuses to take responsibility for the pregnancy, suggesting that it could have been anyone else. But Debbie comes to her friend's rescue, saying that her friend wasn't seeing anyone else when they met. But Lawrence isn't convinced. He proceeds to tell Pamela that she should have aborted the pregnancy when she found out. On hearing this, Pamela slaps him. Shocked and upset, Lawrence gives them a final warning and tells them that he would not take responsibility for the baby, and that if Pamela decides to keep it, she should be ready to take the full responsibility for it. Debbie expresses her disgust that her friend could stoop so low as to open her legs for someone like Lawrence, to which Pamela replies that she was drunk and would not have cheapened herself to Lawrence had she been sober. He tells them that he's getting married and would not be bullied into accepting a pregnancy that isn't his. As they exchange words, the door opens and in steps Olivia. She sees the women, picks up the report and confronts her man, who begins to stammer excuses. Angry and frustrated, Olivia storms out. Lawrence then sends the ladies out, after making a final declaration to Pamela that he would not be taking responsibility for the pregnancy. At home, Debbie tells Pamela that she has two options. Either she becomes a baby mama and suffers the disappointment of her mother, or she gets rid of the pregnancy and moves on with her life. But Pamela doesn't want to do either. Instead, she decides she would sleep with a man and pin the pregnancy on him. Grudgingly, she decides that David would be the easiest option. Next, we see a worried-looking Lawrence on a phone call with Frank. He tells his friend, Frank, the whole story. Frank tells him that he is old enough to be father, but Lawrence insists that even though this is true, he wants it to be with the girl he loves, which is Olivia, but that she knows about the whole drama and is not taking his calls. At the mention of Olivia in the matter, Frank dismisses her. The two friends decide to continue the discussion later. Just then, the door opens and Olivia steps into the room. She asks Lawrence what he is going to do about the problem. He replies that he has asked Pamela to get rid of it. Olivia is pleased. She tells Lawrence that even though she was mad at him, she wasn't going to leave him, because she would not have been able to find another man that could please her in bed. She asks him to join her and leads him to the upper room. In bed, a satisfied Olivia heads to the shower. Lawrence decides to go through her bag and finds a contraceptive. When Olivia returns, he confronts her. She tells him that there was no way she was going to allow him make her a baby mama, and upon further probing, she admits that she had gotten pregnant on a few occasions. She ends by warning him never to go through her things again. As the story progresses, we next see that Pamela is now in a relationship with David. They are having dinner and he is sampling her cooking. He is pleased, and compliments her on her many qualities. She tells him that there is one more thing she is yet to show him, and that he would get to know soon. Felicia joins them, as David compliments her as well for passing on the cooking skills to her daughter. Next, we see Pamela dressed in a towel. David is not in the room with her, so she calls Debbie, and tells her that even though David is not bad in bed, she fears the plan might not work. Regardless, she decides to be optimistic. At his home, Frank comes for a visit. He asks Lawrence to repeat what he'd earlier told him. Lawrence tells him that he wants to get married to Olivia. Frank laughs it off, and reveals to Lawrence that Olivia is a sophisticated call girl who's for hire to the top politicians in the country. He says she was even brought to him at one time when he needed a girl to pass the night. Of course, Lawrence doesn't believe him. He tells his friend that if that had been the case, he would have warned him, but Frank argues that he didn't know Lawrence was going to take Olivia seriously. Frank then tells him to carry out his own investigations and uncover the truth himself. Alone at night with Olivia, and while she sleeps, Lawrence takes the opportunity to look into her phone. But he cannot get through the security. He tries facial recognition, but that doesn't work, so he tries a few passwords, and guesses the correct one. Now he has access to her phone. What he sees brings him to his knees in anguish, waking a sleeping Olivia in the process. She sees him lying there in pain, sees her phone with him, and understands that the game is up. It's daytime, and Olivia is pleading with Lawrence. She cries and asks for forgiveness, making the point that she forgave him when he got another woman pregnant, but Lawrence's mind is made up. She has to go. He asks her to drop the spare key and to get out of his life. In Pamela's home, there is fire on the mountain. As the two friends discuss, we hear that Mr. Martin is blackmailing Pamela with information about her pregnancy. As Pamela worries that he could leak the information to her mother, the phone rings. It is Lawrence. Lawrence is remorseful, Lawrence is repentant, Lawrence is sorry, but Pamela is not having any of it. When he asks what she did with the baby, she tells him off by calling him a big joke, then she ends the call. After the call, the friends ponder how her test results got into the hands of Mr. Martin. They eventually conclude that it could have only been David, because besides Debbie, the only other person who had access to her room was David. Both girls then ponder the ramifications of what this new revelation could bring. Friends engage themselves in discussions on the issue. We hear Debbie tell Pamela to take Lawrence's call if he calls again. Pamela doesn't think so. She's angry that Lawrence ridiculed her. Lawrence on another scene accepts that he was indeed rude to her, and that he was stupid to have called her one of those girls who sleep around with men and blame it on alcohol. We hear Lawrence admit for the first time that he feels Pamela is a decent girl from a good home. Frank believes it is destiny. Pamela wishes the whole mess didn't happen. Debbie replies that it did, and that what's important is how she handles it moving forward. Pamela is worried about the David factor, as Debbie says she has a bad feeling about him. As Pamela wonders if he saw the test result, Debbie believes so. She says that he is the only other person who could have seen it. Pamela is still trying to analyze the situation. If David had seen the results, then why hasn't he confronted her yet? And how did it get to Mr. Martin? What is the connection? Pamela ponders these questions. To find answers to these questions and more, Debbie asks Pamela to call David and invite him for dinner at her place. The day arrives, we see David having dinner with Pamela. Debbie comes down to join them. The girls tell David that the food he's eating is poisoned. They tell him he has 10 minutes before the poison starts to work, and that they have the antidote. They tell him to answer their questions, so he accepts. Pamela asks him to tell them what he saw and what he took the night he was in her room. David admits that he took the test results and gave it to Mr. Martin. He also reveals that he'd been working with Mr. Martin for many years, and that his being with her was all Mr. Martin's idea. Through flashback, we see David and Mr. Martin together, where the latter tells the former how he believes that a marriage between David and Pamela is one way he can get his hands on the fortune his late friend left behind for the two women, since his attempts at trying to marry the mother have failed. David agrees to the plan. After his admission, the ladies tell him to leave, but he hesitates. He begs for the antidote, only for them to tell him there was no poison in the food to start with. David is sent out of the house, leaving the ladies in disbelief. Next, we see Lawrence at a venue waiting for someone. He is waiting for Pamela. She appears and sits down reluctantly. It becomes clear that Lawrence asked for the meeting. Lawrence apologizes to her for what he did. He says he was wrong and asks for forgiveness. Pamela wonders out loud why men always blame the women for a pregnancy whenever they have sex with them. She wonders why it's always the woman's fault. Lawrence apologizes again and promises to take full responsibility for the pregnancy. He asks her if she has aborted it. Pamela's mind flashes back to the discussion she had with Debbie, when she was presented with the two options of being a baby mama or aborting the pregnancy. Back to the present, we see Pamela admit to Lawrence that she kept the pregnancy. Lawrence is relieved and happy at the news. They shake hands and agree to be friends, as Lawrence promises to be a good father. At the Johnsons' home, Mr. Martin has just confronted Felicia with news of the report. He tells her that she needs a male figure of authority in her home to prevent such issues from happening. He tells her to give him a chance. Felicia is still dumbstruck as she stares at the report in her hand. Just then, Pamela comes in with Debbie. Her mother confronts her with the news. Pamela apologizes, but Felicia would have none of it. As the debate heats on, Debbie reveals to Felicia that it was Mr. Martin who set up David with Pamela in the first place. Mr. Martin vehemently denies it. He continues the denials as he is once again thrown out. A few months later, we see a loved-up Lawrence and a heavily pregnant Pamela. They talk about the baby and all the things a new pregnant couple talk about. It is obvious they are enjoying the impending thrills of being new parents. Pamela asks Lawrence if he regrets their meeting, and Lawrence replies no, and in a joking manner. Replies that they should swap boxes again so that they can start all over. In the final scene, we see Lawrence on one knee. Felicia and Debbie are in the room. A heavily pregnant Pamela walks down the staircase and sees Lawrence on one knee with a ring in his hands. He tries to say the words, but they fail him. With joy written all over her face, Pamela tells him to just pop the question. He asks her to marry him. A joyous Pamela says yes. He puts the ring on her finger and everyone is happy. We see smiles and hugs all round, as the family celebrate the union that was brought about by chance. And that's it for today's recap. We invite you to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more juicy content.